Okay, this is a little bit too big for the frame, but well, you can see it here. This is a very old clapperboard that my grandfather gave me when he moved recently. And if I had some chalk, then maybe I would write like the procrastination update. What I've done here is that I've done my absolute best to categorize all these piles into smaller piles of DVDs and Blu-rays. This is going to be mostly rather a mix between DVDs and Blu-rays. Some parts are going to have more DVDs and some are going to have more Blu-rays. But I tried to organize them into categories or genres or in terms of foreign film as much as I could. Although it is a little bit difficult, there's going to be some overlap in terms of genre and countries, and in some cases maybe in terms of what's the word, boutique labels. But what I did basically was I went through my Letterboxd account, which I can link down below. I'm not sure if this camera is completely straight actually, but hopefully it's fine. Yeah, so I can link my Letterboxd account in the description, because what I did was I went through my account, what I had watched over the past. Well, it's been a long time since I made videos frequently, and so obviously I bought and watched a lot of stuff in the meantime. And I hope that there's not gonna be anything here that I included in the last video, because when I made the last one, it had been so long since I made one, so I just included all kinds of stuff that I bought over the past few months or whatever it was, and a lot of that stuff I hadn't seen, and I don't really remember all of it, and honestly I can't be bothered to go through the video and make sure that every single title here was not included in that video, but I'm pretty sure that there shouldn't be too many, at least here, that I already talked about, and if there are, then I hadn't seen them in the last video, so I will at least have something new to say about them. But I think it's pretty safe to say that 99% of this is new, so there shouldn't be any too much overlap in that sense. Anyway, what else? Yeah, so all right, yeah. So I just went, like I said, what I did with my Letterboxd account, I went through I just went through it for the, like in the past year. I went through what I had seen and I picked out the stuff that I had physical copies of that I felt like I had something to say about. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna try to do my best here. There's a lot of titles that I want to try to be as eloquent about as possible, or realistically just somewhat coherent about. But yeah, instead of making a long video like last time, I'm gonna do a few short ones. And this first one is going to be Ray Harryhausen, and then that's gonna segue into a pretty good number of movie documentaries, and then finally some regular documentaries. So let's get started with these two. I am a really big Harryhausen fan. I'm not sure when I was introduced to him. I know that I bought Clash of the Titans on DVD at the Sci-Fi bookstore in Stockholm in the summer of 2010. Clash of the Titans, incidentally, is released as a premium collection Blu-ray, and I was just looking at that in the recent week, I think. I wanted to get that, but it's a little bit difficult to get those premium. I managed to get these two, but it's typically a bit difficult, and well, maybe not difficult, but it's pricey to import them to Sweden, because you gotta go through third-party sellers, and they're gonna charge you quite a lot usually. But I was able to get these two from Amazon, actually for a really good price, from a seller who, I don't think he charged me for shipping even, and the price was, well, he did, but it was very cheap. Usually third-party sellers from Amazon who who sell privately, who's not doing this as a job, they tend to have to charge you quite a lot for shipping, but these were very cheap, so I was really happy to get Mighty Joe Young and The Valley of Gwangi, neither of which I had seen before. So I was really happy to get these. These look really nice. I don't. I mean, the special features are a bit lacking, but they look nice. And I just wanted to see these on Blu-ray, really, or I just wanted to see them. Period. This one was. It was entertaining. There were definitely some good effects in this. There's especially one effect involving this dinosaur where there's like the dinosaur is in the middle, and then I think on either side of them there are two men on horseback. I'm not sure if they're on horseback or if they're on foot, but they have lassos that they're throwing around the dinosaur's neck. And the way that Harryhausen has matched this frame by frame is really impressive. So that I really liked. But overall, the movie was not one of my favorite from him. This one, however, was definitely one of my favorites from Harryhausen. He does the same thing. You can actually see a lasso here, so he does a similar thing in this one. It's almost more impressive what he does here in terms of the lasso, but the overall effects for Mighty Joe Young is just batshit insane. There's just so much stuff happening here. There's so much. I mean, he animates in this particular movie. He animates a lot of debris, like falling debris, and I'm not sure how he would have done that. Like, how were the pieces attached to each other, and how did he make sure that they moved the way he wanted them to move when the building came crashing down, whatever. Yeah, he doesn't stop to. What am I trying to say? He never ceases to amaze me with what he does, and the fact that he was able to do this thing on his own, basically figuring this stuff out himself. It's quite impressive. And then you have the ending sequence at this burning orphanage, I think, which had this red tinted image from the fire. Really great stuff. When it cuts to that image, which is red, I mean, that's just such a great moment. This actually, I mean, I should say that a lot of these I haven't seen recently. I mean, some of these I've seen months and months ago. So I may not remember everything in terms of special features. This one actually looks like it has a commentary, which I always love his commentaries. There's a lot of great Harryhausen insight in the commentaries and in interviews. He was always very generous, it seemed, to give interviews and to record commentaries. And there are a few moments which kind of shows the fact that time has moved on since he worked in movies, because he sometimes references when whatever historian or let's say it's somebody else who works in special effects who's doing the commentary with him, when they're pointing things out, he was like, hey, you're not supposed to see that. We were doing these movies once. Well, we were doing these movies for people to see once, and we didn't expect them to have any kind of longevity. So that kind of insight is pretty unique. Yeah, I mean, I always lived in a world where movies could be viewed easily. Obviously, that wasn't always the case. I'm gonna show a DVD here just because I have 2 more Blu-rays. But this DVD, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, is also available in this kind of edition from the premium collection. But again, these two I happened to be able to find for cheap, but this one was a bit more difficult at the time. And I just really wanted to see the movie, so I got the DVD. It's got 2 documentaries, it says here on the back, so some good special features, and the DVD is fine, but I would like to have the Blu-ray, of course, at some point. I just wanted to see the movie, so I got the DVD now, because I was a bit anxious to see everything, or to get the things that I didn't have. Yeah, this was really fun. The ending really impressed me with the roller coaster. That was really one of my favorite sequences that I've seen in any Harryhausen movie. That was really impressive. And the scenes leading up to that, there was some really interesting cinematography on the streets. Really some quite, almost some noir-like moments. Here's one from Studio Canal. They've released a lot of these Hammer movies on Blu-ray, and I have a few more, but I wanted to wait until I had seen them all, so I'm going to show them all later on in a future video sometime later on this year, I guess. Hopefully. This one, though, I I didn't get because it was a Hammer movie, although the combination was cool. But I got this, of course, because of Harryhausen. This one, I wouldn't say that. Um, I mean, this doesn't really demonstrate his abilities very well. There's not really a whole lot going on here in terms of stop motion. There's a few moments where you can tell, oh yeah, that this is Harryhausen doing his thing, but for the most part, it's a bit lacking in effects, and I would say that the movie overall is a bit of a struggle to get through, actually, because it's just not that exciting. It takes place in a prehistoric world, and they don't speak, so they don't speak. They don't use language, and so the movie it's not a silent movie. I mean, there's sound, but there's no dialogue. So it was hard to feel engaged when they weren't speaking. Just something as simple as that, or I don't know. I guess it's a big part of movies, dialogue, but some movies work without them. I mean, there's a lot of silent movies from the 20s without intertitles, or not with a lot of them anyway, and they tend to work, but this one just didn't. Here's one called Earth versus the Flying Saucers. This, I think maybe might be a little bit difficult to get. I think it's out of print. A little bit older, you can kind of see that on some of the Blu-ray design, but a good Blu-ray and a good movie. This is in color, because I believe he says on the commentary or in in an interview on this disc that if we were able to film these movies in color, we would. So it's really great to have this new technology of coloring the movies. And this, I don't know if this is something that's done now. This, it almost feels like a thing of its time. And when I say its time, I'm referring to maybe, what, 10 years ago? 15? I don't know. But I'm just not interested in seeing a colorized version. I want to see it the way it was made. If they would have filmed it in color, yeah, fine. But I don't like when they go in afterwards and kind of add stuff. Even though Ray Harryhausen himself felt that was a good idea, I just don't enjoy it. So I saw this in black and white, and yeah, again, a little bit atypical in terms of his animation. I mean, you have these flying saucers, and they don't have a whole lot of personality. Although they talk about how he tried to get personality, how he tried to give the quote unquote creatures or the flying saucers personality, even though they couldn't move around in the way that his creatures usually could. But I mean, it's a sci-fi movie, and most of his movies were fantasy, and so it does feel a little bit different. Then we have this one, Ray Harryhausen, The Early Years Collection, which I suppose Harryhausen fans may already be well aware of this edition, but if you don't have it, and if you like Harryhausen, I would recommend getting it. Not just because of the short films. I mean, obviously it collects a bunch of these short films that he made, fairy tales like Humpty Dumpty and Red Riding Hood and King Midas, I think one was called, Mother Goose. So yeah, the films themselves, they aren't as interesting as his later ones, of course, but it's cool to see where he started. And just as an overall package, it's a really fun time to go through this. There's a lot of interviews and special features and featurettes, and there are a few of his very early shorts as well that was commissioned by, I don't know by what, but there's some kind of military short. I think maybe that was shown for educational purposes, possibly somewhere. But it's cool to see where he got his start. Even though they're very amateurish compared to his later ones, there's still good stuff in them. Finally, this is where we transition after this into movie documentaries, because this is a documentary about him called Special Effects Titan, which I've been wanting to see for a few years, or more than a few actually. Released by Arrow Films. I didn't really know that, to be honest. The documentary, I honestly don't really remember it very well, which I guess means that it just wasn't that memorable. Well, I guess it means that it wasn't that good. Maybe it's because I had seen so many of his. Well, I'd seen so much of. I'd seen so much special features, so much content in terms of special features on Blu-rays. I mean, I have the indicator sets and so on. So and had heard him speak a lot by this point. So I had heard other people speaking about his movies, and so there didn't seem to be a lot of new interesting things that I hadn't heard before. But I am a completist when it comes to the things that I really like. So I wanted to get that. So I think with this, there's not really anything that I still need from Harryhausen. I think I have everything. There may be a couple minor things that he worked on that I don't have or that I haven't seen. I think there's one, I don't know for sure, but I think maybe one nature documentary called The Animal World, or something like that, which I don't have, but that seems like a very minor thing. Um, so I'm not really gonna go out of my way to get that. I think I have everything now. I've seen all of his movies. I've seen most of it, and yeah, so it's been a really fun time to explore Harryhausen. It's been a 10-year long journey, and I've come to an end on that journey. But it's been really fun. My favorite Harryhausen experiences remain with the indicator box sets. I still have to say, because they always do such a great job. But this was really fun too. I got all of this actually within the space of a few months, I think. So I just really wanted to get the things that I didn't have. So yeah, this was fun. Okay, let's move on to some other movie documentaries. Here's a double bill, or a double, well, a Blu-ray from Umbrella, an Australian company, with two movies, Electric Boogaloo, which I had seen before. I don't know if I've shown it, but I mean, the problem now is that I don't know if the things that I've seen, like in the instance, in the case of this, my last video before my hiatus was a year and a half ago, I think. So did I see this movie less than a year and a half ago? Well, in that case, I haven't spoken about it, but I don't really know exactly when I saw it. So, well, anyway, I had the DVD, a Swedish DVD, I think, which was bare bones. I really enjoyed the documentary, but I wanted to get this Blu-ray because the Blu-ray has a bunch of special features, and of course it has this one too, Machete Maidens Unleashed. So Electric Boogaloo is a really fun documentary about Cannon films, and there were so many movies that they spoke about that I really wanted to see. I still haven't really delved into it very much, but they talked about a lot of movies that looked really fun from Cannon, and the story of Cannon is really cool too, and they do a good job in presenting it. And then the same filmmaker made this one, Machete Maidens Unleashed, about kind of rogue filmmaking in yeah, I was gonna say that I didn't want to get it wrong, but I did have it right. I was gonna say the Philippines, and indeed, so they were able to go over there and film movies cheaper, and maybe get away from certain regulations perhaps. And it's not as good as this one. He also made one, this filmmaker, I don't know his name. Well, he made one called wait a minute, which one? Oh crap! He made one called Not Hollywood, I think, about exploitation. I think, right? Yeah, it's been a while since I saw that one, but that's another one that's really good. And I think I'm not. I don't remember which one was his last, but I know that he said after his third one he wasn't gonna make another one, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm sure he's got a good reason. And the three that he made were really, really fun and high energy. And so, yeah, this is a great Blu-ray. It's region free as well. Let's put that here. Now, speaking of Canon, I also got this, which in Sweden, this is a Swedish DVD called Kings of Hollywood, but the original title is, let's see, The Go-Go Boys, the inside story of Canon films. So the people who were actually responsible for the Canon films, for the people who produced them and the people who made them, especially this guy, whose name I'm not sure. I don't want to get it wrong, so I don't want to say it. I think I know what it is, but I don't want to make a fool of myself. Anyway, they weren't involved in Electric Boogaloo because they wanted to make their own film about their story, and this is not as good. But I still wanted to see what they did themselves. I would say that if you want to see a documentary about Canon films, don't watch the one that the people behind Canon films made. Watch Electric Boogaloo instead, because it's much better, and that is the popular opinion. But I would, I agree with it. Then we have one called I Am Divine, which was, well, this is another thing of those, another one of those things when it comes to the Ray Harryhausen movie. I mentioned that I already knew quite a lot about him, and the same thing kind of goes with this. Divine was a star. He wasn't transgender, but he was a drag performer in John Waters movies, and I love John Waters. I've recently discovered his movie. I've recently started to see his movies in a new light, and I have some of his movies coming up in a future part. So I guess I could have talked about this with those, but anyway, this it made sense to put that here as well. So yeah, so I recently started to see his movies in a new light. I didn't always like them. I'm gonna talk about this later. But I do like them quite a bit now, and I have over the years been very fascinated with John Waters himself, and so I've heard him speak a lot, and I've heard stories that are spoken about here as well. But there is definitely more stuff in this that I didn't know. But not everybody seems to like this. It is a Talking Heads documentary. They can be a bit hit and miss. For me, when it comes to Talking Heads documentaries, I really have to be interested in the subject to have fun with it. In this case, I definitely am. Yeah, so Divine, he died in 86, 88, and this was made sometime in the 2000s, so 2010s maybe. Yeah, you have John Waters here, by the way, and yeah, some other people who were involved in the making of some of his movies who appear in this. Yeah, I mean it's quite good. Got this as well, Ulrich Seidel, a director at work, just because again I'm a completist when it comes to the things that I like, and I got a big box set of all of his movies. This Austrian filmmaker Ulrich Seidel, and I was aware of this this DVD, this documentary. And so I just got it. I paid a little bit too much for it, but I wasn't sure if this was going to be one of those titles that when it goes out of print, it's just impossible to find because it's so niche, I guess. So I didn't want to risk that, so I just paid whatever, I don't know, 12 euros maybe, which is too much for this because it's only an hour long, I think, yeah, 52 minutes, and it's really not that good. There were a few moments that I kind of enjoyed, but overall, it's just not worth the money. So I would say that don't get it. It's not really worth it unless you can find it for cheap, or unless you happen to have the money. It's just not really worth it. Then we got this, which it's called Henri George Clouzot's Inferno. So Henri George Clouzot, he was a filmmaker who made movies like The Wages of Fear and Diabolique, and he was gonna make this movie called Inferno, but it was never completed. And so this documentary released by Arrow Academy talks about that and reenacts some scenes that were supposed to be in the movie, and shows whatever is available of the movie. For whatever reason, this didn't really click with me. The movie, first of all, didn't really intrigue me that much. Whatever footage they had from when the movie was supposed to be made, but was never finished, but the footage that they have didn't look that intriguing to me. Some of it did, but there just didn't seem to be enough. And whatever they filled in, they tried to fill in the whole story, and I just didn't think that quite worked. And the people who spoke about the movie, I don't know. I just didn't think that it really came together. But this is one that people generally like. I guess just sometimes movies don't click for whatever reason, and this one didn't with me. Now this one I have probably shown before, but I've had this for a few years. I got this from my mom for Christmas one year. I don't remember exactly when, but a few years ago. And I don't know. It took me a while to see it, and even now it's been a while since I saw it. So yeah, I've had this for a while. But it's Mark Cousin's The Story of Film and Odyssey. So this one I've known about for forever, since this came out. Basically, I remember people talking about this a long time ago, and I've had this in my hands before in a store in Gothenburg, but it was so expensive, so I didn't get it. But I've seen it now, and I really like this. People have certain complaints about him. They don't like his narration. He narrates this himself. People don't. They have problems with his narration, with his voice, which I didn't really seem to have a problem with. People also think that he picks and chooses a bit too liberally, like he doesn't really give the definite story of film. He gives a story of film where he talks about movies that he's interested in that maybe aren't as important as others. And I don't know. To me, though, I mean, it is called The Story of Film, but to me, this is the passionate retelling of a certain aspect of film to people who are also interested in film. And so I don't really see what the issue is. Like, it's I don't know if there's a definite story of film. I mean, there are obviously milestones that you tend to talk about, but I would much rather hear about obscure movies. I mean, I'd like to get the story, but then I would also like to hear about obscure stuff that maybe you don't usually hear about, to get recommendations rather than hear the same thing that you've already heard before. I prefer this personal approach that he had, and it's very long. It's like, what, 15 hours long, I think. It says 900 minutes, so I guess that's I mean, wait a minute, 600, yeah, so it's about 15 hours, yeah, okay, easy math. 15 hours long. That may seem like a lot, but he's also trying to sum up 115 years, whatever, whenever this was made, of human expression on screen, and that even 15 hours doesn't seem to be enough for that. So I think it's fine that he picks and chooses. I really enjoyed this one, and I heard about a lot of the titles that I hadn't heard about before. He has made a new one called Women Make Film, which I think is about the same length or maybe even longer, which I wouldn't mind watching, but it's not really a priority to get it at this point. This too, The Lost World of Mitchell and Kenyon, and Electric Edwardians, the films of Mitchell and Kenyon. I haven't seen this, so I don't know exactly what this is, but Mitchell and Kenyon, they were two filmmakers. Well, they weren't really they were more like, they worked, they were sort of at, I don't remember the whole story here, but they were sort of, from what I remember, it seemed like they were sort of at the right place at the right time, kind of thing. They came around in the very early days of cinema, of the movie camera, and I think they sort of went to towns, and they filmed people, and then they displayed the footage, and then they charged people for viewing themselves, basically. People who had never seen this, who had never seen themselves on screen before. So they sort of took advantage. They were more they sort of talk about this in this documentary. They were more businessmen than filmmakers, but they still did capture some interesting footage of life in England around the turn of the century. And it says presented by Dan Cruikshank, who it's funny, I just spoke about Mark Cousin, some people having problems with his voice or his narration. I kind of felt that about this guy. He was fine, but just the way he enunciated was very enthusiastic. It's like, just sometimes it became a little bit too much. Anyway, no, he was good, don't get me wrong. It's just I am certainly nitpicking here. Um, but yeah, he's presenting the story of their films, how they were found in like a couple of barrels in a basement or whatever, and they were fairly intact. All these years later, their Mitchell and Kenyon's films were found, and they tell this story in 3 episodes, 1 hour each. It's pretty good. I did like that. I haven't seen this yet, like I said, but there's a couple more. I mean, there's at least one more. There's at least a third DVD as well. Um, Here's one called Real Paradise, which I really can't speak about because I haven't seen it. But this is one that I've been wanting to see for years. I have to read the back to really know. I can't because there's a fucking sticker in the way. But it's well, let's see here. So this one I probably have on my Amazon wish list for, well, more than 5 years, and I just never pulled the trigger on it. And the reason why I haven't seen it now is because I just don't have the player for it. I only have a Region 2 player. But I am planning on upgrading again at some point. I mean, I've said this so many times, but my player broke down a couple years ago. So I'm using my PS4, and so I can't see this Region 1 DVD on my PS4. But so let's see, John Pearson, noted indie film maven. I don't actually know what that means. An author of something something. Uprooted his family a year and moved to a remote island of Fiji. His passion is the 180 Meridian Cinema, which becomes the island's focal point of entertainment after he makes admission free and starts showing the most current popular releases, worldwide releases, everything from Bandit to Beckham to Jackass. In the meantime, his wife Janet and their 2 kids immerse themselves in the Fijian culture, discovering in very personal ways what it's like to be the outsider. So I heard some people saying that this guy John Pearson was very unlikable, but I don't know what that refers to exactly. But yeah, so he opens up a theater in this somewhat remote place, I suppose, and shows movies for free. I mean, so just the idea sounded interesting to me, and it still does. So I'm glad that I finally was able to get it for cheap on Amazon. I just happened to come across I mean, you know, I go through my wish list once in a while, and I guess this one just stood out now because the price was cheap. So I just bought it now. So I was happy to finally get that. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. Okay, so that's all of the movie documentaries. So the rest of it is just regular documentaries that's not related to movies. This first one I haven't seen yet, but I'm not really planning on seeing it anytime soon. I want to see this. I just don't think that I'll get to this soon, so I'm showing it now. Showa, the Four Sisters. So I think it said on the back, if I'm not mistaken, that he filmed this before the production of Showa. Yeah, during the preparation of what would become Showa. So he interviewed these 4 women. If you don't know what Showa is, it's very, very exhaustive, if that's the right word. Very long documentary about the Holocaust, where he does not use any archival footage, but most just films what the places look like now, and he talks about eyewitnesses, both on both sides, so to speak. I think most people know what it is, but I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions. But the Four Sisters is 4 interviews that he conducted with these 4 women, and he made each of the interviews into one movie. So 237 minutes. So that is. So I guess it seems like they're 1 hour each then. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if these are listed as, for example, on IMDb or Letterboxd, if they're listed as 4 different movies, or if the movie is listed as Showa, the Four Sisters. I don't really know. Then I got this 7 to 63 Up. I got this because of the latest one, 63 Up. I already had the DVD 7 to 49 Up, which I guess I would have bought in 2012, which is when 56 Up came out, but I don't think it had come out when I bought the set. Anyway, so yeah, essentially I just bought this to upgrade and to get 63 Up, and just to get them all in one place rather than getting 63 Up separately. It just made more sense to rebuy to rebuy the first few, and then get 56 and 63 Up as well in my collection, and then have them all on Blu-ray, and then have the the special feature here, 7 Up and Me, which was a documentary about this Up series, featuring celebrities and their relationship with the Up series. And I have to say that I really didn't like that documentary, but I'm glad that it's included. Of course, the most important part of this is the Up series, and yeah, they. I'm totally blanking on his name, but I know what his name, Michael Apted. So I'm not sure that he was involved that much in 7 Up, but from 14 to 63, he has been like the creative force behind these documentaries, where he goes back to the kids that they filmed in 1963, I think, around that time, and every 7 years they catch up with these people and see what they've done since last time. And so they've filmed them for 56 years. They've been filming them every 7 years, which is a remarkable project. There is actually a kind of a Swedish version of this, or a similar thing, Jordbro Sviten, I think the name is, which I want to see. That documentary series doesn't do one movie every 7 years. It seems to be a little bit more irregular than that, but it seems to be a similar thing. So I'm very interested in seeing that. Anyway, I was just reminded of that. So yeah, I mean, I like these quite a lot, but I don't know if the movies work that well on their own. I mean, obviously the project is supposed to be seen together. Yeah, so my only issue with the movies is that they do so much repetition of what has happened before, that when you're watching 63 Up, there's so much to catch the viewer up on, because I suppose it makes sense that they do it like that, because I mean, for people who see these when they air on TV in the UK, if they haven't seen the last one since that movie aired, I mean, maybe they don't remember everything, so they need to be caught up. But watching them like this, obviously you don't have to be caught up, because I did actually rewatch all of the ones before, not 7, but the other ones I rewatched, and then 63 for the first time. So when you get to 63, there's so much to catch up on, that like a third of it is like stuff you've seen before. So I couldn't sit through that another time. So I think before that, in like 42 or 49, I just couldn't sit through the same footage again. So I started fast forwarding, and in 63 Up, there's a lot of fast forwarding, unfortunately. So that's my only problem with them. But again, it's a remarkable project, and I don't know if we're gonna see another one. Maybe that doesn't seem that likely. I think Michael Apted is gonna be well into his 80s at that point, but we'll see. Here's one called The Untold History of the United States by Oliver Stone, the controversial 10-hour documentary series. I'm very interested in this, but I just need to set aside the time for it, so I haven't seen that yet. Here's one called A Spell to Ward Off the Darkness, which is very difficult to explain, so I'm not really going to do it, because I don't think I'm going to do it justice. It is a very unique documentary. Ben Rivers and Ben Russell made this. Who put these out? Soda. What does it say? Soda Film Plus Art. So, okay, yeah. Well, it's a unique documentary that I didn't quite like, but I've been interested in this for a while. Nature is very much in focus here. There's actually a black metal concert at the end of this, which was kind of cool, but didn't really do much for me. Yeah, it's a documentary in 3 parts, and but there's sort of a one of the characters who's in all 3 of them, and I enjoyed the first one the most, definitely. Um, Manakamana, a Dog Wolf DVD. This one was very interesting. It's a very minimalist film. I can understand if people would maybe be bored by this, but I thought this was fascinating. I got this in a Dog Wolf sale, and this is one that I've been interested in for a few years. It says here, from the Sensory Ethnographic Lab, creators of Sweetgrass and Leviathan. I've seen Sweetgrass, but I haven't seen Leviathan. I would really like to see Leviathan. This one, though, so I forget exactly where this takes place. It says the Hindu temple of Manakamana is almost a mile above sea level. I don't know what country this is in. I don't really remember the country. But they have installed this lift, this 10-minute ride up to this Hindu temple, where people go instead of having to hike up. I guess they've built a lift. And so what you have in this movie is, how long is the movie? It's 111 minutes. So I would assume that there are 11 parts to this, because like I said, the trip takes 10 minutes, and what you have is 11 trips up to the up. I think some of the trips go up the lift and maybe some of them go down, but you have 11, as I presume, or something like 11 uninterrupted shots of the lift going up or down. And that may sound very extreme, like extremely minimal, but each shot has different people in the lift. It's a very small lift. It only fits, I think, the clip with the most people has just maybe 3 people, maybe 4. But I know that there was one with 3 old ladies eating ice cream, and the ice cream was melting. So it's just an exercise in minimalism and in looking at it's hard to explain, man. It's but you're introduced to new people every time you go up the lift, and you learn very quickly that this is what the movie is gonna be. I'm gonna be with these people now for 10 minutes, and that's it. So what can I look at? Well, it creates a very interesting exercise in looking at things, that paying attention to things that maybe you wouldn't normally pay attention to. And that there's one shot with goats in the lift going up, and I don't know what they were gonna do with the goats, but they're going up there and they're on their own in the lift, and just being with these goats for 10 minutes in going up this lift high above ground, it was just a kind of a unique, cool feeling. I'm doing such a fucking bad job trying to explain this film, because it is kind of difficult. But I was really fascinated with it. I suppose maybe it isn't for everybody, but I really liked it. Okay, I'm running out of steam a bit, so I'm glad that I only have one left here. This is one called Desperate Man Blues. This has been one of those kind of holy grail documentaries for me for a number of years. This is quite hard to get. I was able to get this from a Swedish seller, actually, because on Amazon and eBay this is just outrageous. At least the last time I looked, and every time that I've looked. But this is, it says 180 minutes, but there's so much special features. The DVD, I mean, the film itself is only, I don't know exactly, it's maybe an hour long, 45, 50 minutes long. And it's about this guy, what's his name? Joe something, I think. Yeah, well, it says Joe. Joe Bussard. He has collected American old, like 20s and 30s jazz and country and bluegrass and that stuff on record. And he has done this for such a long time. he started so early collecting these things. He would go from house to house. He had this extreme interest in this music and collecting and preserving this music. So starting in the 50s, I think he would go from house to house and he would ask people, hey, do you have any old records maybe that I can go through and buy from you? And he would find the things that he wanted, and he has kept doing this up, but he still does it in this documentary, and this came out, it says 2006. So what has happened is basically that he has collected so much music for himself, but a lot of this stuff has been lost. So he has essentially created a library, a unique library of records that only he has. Not all, I mean, he has so many thousands of records, but a good number of them, he has the only known copy of them, I think, or one of the very few copies. I think in many cases he had the only one, and I think I don't know if they talk about that on the DVD or not, if I read this online, but there was a folk music compilation released sometime in the 50s, maybe late 50s, called Anthology of American Folk Music or something like that, which was sort of created by this guy what was his name? Harry Smith. So I think he was another guy who had collected all these old records, and then he put them out in a compilation, a several hour long compilation, which I've actually listened to a couple times, and it's really good, and it's very interesting to listen to, and I think that had a very had a lot of influence on the 60s folk musicians like Bob Dylan, and I think he worked on that. He supplied some of the records for that compilation, I think. So he has been a very important part in preserving a lot of this old American 20s jazz and country music. And there's some great scenes with him just sitting listening to this music, kind of playing drums on his knees. And still to this day, like, I don't know how old he is here, but maybe at least in his 60s. And he's still enjoying this to that extent. And he still goes out to look for new records. So it's a story of one man's obsession, essentially. I wouldn't have minded if this was longer, but it doesn't really have to be. It's a really great documentary. If you can get your hands on it, then I would warmly recommend it, and I'm really happy to have it. Okay, so I'm gonna end the video now. This ended up being a little bit longer than I thought, so yeah. I have a few more videos to make. I'm not sure if I'm gonna make them the same length. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. There's more coming soon, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you then.